BioCore 2015, a four-man chronicle, ALS Exposed. Our members are David Roush, Zach Sundin, Jennifer Shields, and George Hyde. The premise of this project was to successfully perform a PCR reaction of the human wild-type SOD1 gene.
Polymerase chain reaction, or PCR, is a lab technique designed to amplify a specific DNA target. PCR is accomplished by completing three major cycles: denaturation, primer annealing, and elongation. Through these steps, we were able to successfully obtain bands of our human SOD1 gene in the lab.
SOD1 stands for superoxide dismutase 1. It is named as such because of its function as an enzyme to remove toxic radical oxygen species, or ROSs, from the body. When mutated, most commonly with the A4V mutation, the gene becomes non-functional and no longer is able to remove the harmful radical oxygens in the body. ROS buildup causes the body's neurons to shut down or malfunction.
This mutation is the leading cause of the disease amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS for short. ALS is a rare degenerative motor disease that is ultimately fatal with no known cure. Victims are subject to failing muscles over the final months of their lives. As the motor neurons begin to degenerate, they are unable to fire the correct signals to trigger any movement. Paralysis of the limbs is very common in victims. Eventually, ALS kills the patient as respiratory failure is the final symptom when the phrenic nerve stops firing. Total life expectancy on average is 3 to 5 years.
In an attempt to sympathize with these victims, we conducted a 30-day experiment to further understand living with a disability. Over the span of a month, oxygen masks were worn to symbolize the respiratory complications faced by patients. These masks were worn to class on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday at random. These days were selected because they were our busiest class days.
In addition to wearing the masks to classes, they were worn around campus. For example, Holmes Hall Cafeteria and the CATA bus station. A link has been established between learning and physical disabilities and anxiety. Thus, we decided to test the correlation.
Using the Leibowitz Social Anxiety Scale test, standard baseline anxiety levels were collected for each group member for what our normal anxiety levels are on a normal day without wearing the oxygen mask. The bulk of our data was collected by taking the test following every time the masks were worn in public. In addition to measuring our anxiety levels, we measured the anxiety levels of randomized bystanders throughout the experiment, both with wearing the mask and without wearing the mask.
We hypothesized that anxiety levels of both ourselves and others around us would increase due to the uncomfortable and awkward situations. Our main finding from the 30-day experiment was that each member had increased anxiety when wearing the oxygen nasal cannulas in public compared to being in public without the mask. This shows a correlation between disabilities and social anxiety levels.
However, when analyzing the progression of our anxiety levels deeper, we found that the anxiety levels dropped almost back to our standard baseline. This was because we became more accustomed to the masks and stares received that were associated with wearing them, showing that people learn to live with their disabilities.
One of the significant experiences during this 30-day experiment was when standing in line at the gallery, I sneezed and dropped my tray of food. When I went to clean it up, the bystanders all watched without offering any assistance. One of them even had the audacity to say, "Man, that sucks," and continued to watch me clean it up.
The stares were not only awkward, but incredibly uncomfortable. The avoidance and embarrassment on the looks of other people's faces depicted such feelings. We all agreed that receiving those looks made us feel isolated, judged, and desire to remove the masks, but we had to work through the uncomfortability.
By spending a month playing the role of an ALS patient, we gained a greater perspective on those who must endure hardships such as these.